CFO, I have the honor today of introducing our guest speaker. So we are honored today to have the opportunity to hear an inspiration leader and social activist. Our guest speaker has dedicated her career to developing and implementing sustainable projects locally and globally to help advance equitable and diverse opportunities for refugees, newcomers, women and girls, and underserved communities to feel empowered and to become impactful leaders. Farkhunda Muhtaj is the co-founder of the Sandra, a non-profit organization that uses sport to help ease the settlement journey of refugees and newcomers to Canada. The Directors of Culture and Conscience at the Respect Sport, the humanitarian ambassador for Penny, Appeal Canada, and UHCN Netherlands, and sits on the board of League One Ontario Soccer Social Committee. Drawing to our attention, please welcome our guest speaker,
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Before I actually start speaking, we're going to watch a documentary. It's about 25 minutes, and it will set the tone for what I will be speaking about today. So I hope you enjoy.
Just use a York University professor.
I received a message from my uncle, Fatima, do not get out of the house because Taliban are here. And I thought it was a joke. I never thought that Taliban would take over the country so easily.
Breaking news where the Taliban is quickly sweeping across Afghanistan and is now effectively taking control of the capital, Kabul. Tensions are rising on the ground as residents face the reality of Taliban rule.
تلفزيون خبرتهم که دخترتی میلیون اینا تهدید کردن و دنبالشان هست.
و یک شایعاتی دیگه هم بود که مثلا ما یعنی سوشیال میدیا را تعقیب گرفتن و هیچ کس نمیتونست یعنی با کسی که خیلی ضرورت داره مسیجش خیلی مهم را بده.
My fear was Taliban to come after me at my house and just kill me on the spot.
Concerns are mounting as reports emerge of restrictions and potential rollbacks on women's rights. For the women and girls of Afghanistan, life is going to look a lot different from here on out.
I didn't think that leaving was an option. Who would care about the women national team?
و در پشت حوالي داشتیم اونجا همیشه بازی میکردیم. بزرگترین آرزوی من است که یک دختر فوتبالیست، یک دختر هدفمند به هیچ چیزی فکر نمیکنم، فقط هم فوتبال رو بازی میکنیم. یعنی
آرزوی من بود که در تیم جوانان شرکت کنم و خیلی کوشش کردم تا به هدف خود برسم و رسیدم. یعنی افتخار به خودم بود و به فامیلم بود. نخورین.
I love to play football, and more importantly, I love representing my country in a way that other people wouldn't think of, because they show the other side of Afghanistan, which is mostly war and injustices. People don't get to see the beautiful part, which is us playing sports.
مثلا فکر کنم اینجا بری بعد همین اتفاقا وایسادی و سرد ملی پخش میشه، بیرق کشورتون میارن
بعد از
سرود ملی
وقتی پخش میشه
من خیلی دوست دارم موسیقی.
دقیقا ایوه بس سریع اون انداز.
When I used to see girls younger than me playing football, I would be so proud. I am part of a big change in my country. But then I saw all my dreams and all my goals disappear within a second.
The United States has officially announced that the last flight out for US nationals and eligible Afghans will be August 31st. Thousands of Afghans are rushing to the airport, desperate to leave the country.
سلام فرخنده جان، در دفتر معامله شده و امی تیم نوجوانای دخترها که هستن زیر خطر هستن. ما از این کسایی که خود خارج زندگی میکنن از امیا میخوایم که اینمی 25 عضو تیم ملی در اموال خانوادهشان به خارج ببرن.
I was in shock. I knew I had to act immediately, but I had no clue what to do or how to do it. I always followed the news in Afghanistan, and when Kabul fell, my heart really dropped. My parents fled Afghanistan 30 years ago in a similar situation. I saw myself reflected in every young Afghan girl. I knew that they couldn't be left behind.
When I opened WhatsApp, I saw a text message from my coach, and Farkhunda was added to group. I had absolutely no idea who she was, but we trusted her anyway because that was our only hope.
سلام همگی، فرخنده هستم. کوشش میکنم شد که شما را از افغانستان انتقال بدم. لطفاً کل اسنادهایتان را بر من از طریق واتساپ روان کنید و در کدام اپلیکیشن دیگر نه. اوکی؟ تشکر.
My life depended on my phone and my privacy.
The stakes were extremely high for secure communication. If something was intercepted, whether it be their passports or IDs, not only would the mission be jeopardized, but everyone's life would be at risk.
As the evacuation deadline nears, the chaos outside the Kabul airport is only getting worse. The Taliban firing into crowds as desperate Afghans rush the gates in hopes of getting on one of the last few departing flights.
I was finally connected to intelligence officers. I was able to discuss how they were at high risk and why they needed to be evacuated immediately, and they were willing to support me. The escape plan was to get the families to a high school in Kabul. From there, they were supposed to be sent to a military base and airlifted into the Kabul airport.
سلام دختران، فراموش نکنیم که فقط شما و الا 3 اعضای فامیل دیگه‌تان همراهتان میتونه سفر کنه.
بکسایتان آماده باشه، ابروی نان و آب.
و انشالله بخیر کوشش میکنیم که به زودی برایم.
It was hope for me and my family to move to somewhere safer. That kind of gave me the push to move on.
مدار داشتم خیلی یعنی خیلی ارزش داشتم مدار آدم یعنی بود دوباره که داخلش کم داشتم ولی باسام که بود خیلی سنگین میشد یعنی نمیشد که مثلا با او بدوی او را مادم از اون منصرف شدم رفتم به طرف لباسات دیدم خیلی لحظه سختی بود و
وقت رفتن از دکتر این موقعیت لطفاً به زودی خود برسانید لایسنس پلیت موترتان برای روان کنید. تشکر.
I planned my life in my country, and when I found out that this is time for me to leave, I couldn't believe it.
خودم طرف بزرگ خود رفتم و بغلش کردم و خیلی گریان کرد گفت من خیلی نمیخوایم که شما رقمی ببینم میرم.
I left my house. I didn't even take a sec to look, to remember what was things like, and yeah, just remembering things. We rented a taxi, and the car ride was so scary. It was my first time seeing Taliban. Everything was so chaotic. There were gunshots and people screaming. That was the moment that I realized that this is not my home. Like, this is not the place that I used to know. When we got into the location, I saw familiar faces, and as soon as we parked, I just got out of the car and run to my friends, and I just hugged them. I never hugged with so much emotions. We knew that we have each other, and we can get through this with each other.
Pictures speaking to like 15, 16-year-old girls, they're the ones that are kind of pushing their parents to get out of the country through a person that they don't know very well. They trusted me blindly, which is not easy to do. Although it was a very big operation and there were so many individuals and groups behind this, ultimately the girls saw me. I was the main point of contact. I was the one communicating with them, and they thought that all the plans were simply coming from me. So if anything went wrong, it was Farkhunda's fault. And I could never really forgive myself for someone's life being in danger or dying, because that could have very much been a possibility.
We heard this explosion. There was a red light in the sky.
حتی موتر یک لرزه در خود داد که ما یعنی شور خوردیم که فهمیدیم یعنی خیلی ترسیده بودیم. فکر کردیم که یعنی طالبا خبر شدن و میخواین ما رو بکشن.
I thought that that was it, and I was like, did I take that risk for nothing?
سلام همگی. امروز باز کوشش میکنیم. همین موقعیت است که شما خود باید برسانید. تشکر.
It was near airport, so it was more dangerous for us. We waited there without food, without getting any sleep, struggling finding bathrooms, and just waiting for some update.
I would keep asking the intelligence officers, like, what's the next move? How do we get the girls out? But they would tell me, don't worry, everything will be fine. Someone will come pick them up.
We kind of had an eye on the airport, and every 10 minutes there was a plane taking off.
ما فقط في الطيارة سألنا كده كنت متخيل إنه بجد ما مشي شنو ما نستم داخل الطيارة.
Every minute that passes by, like the hope is just kind of disappearing.
It became very clear that it was dangerous for them to stay there. I knew we had to get them out of that situation, and the only hope was the airport in Kabul, specifically that gate that we had access to.
سلام همگی، یک دروازه است در پشت سر میدان.
لطفاً اونجا خود برسانید به خاطر از او دروازه بخیر.
ابراهیم از کشور.
When we got the last location, it was a secret gate, so it wasn't on the map. It wasn't somewhere that like people knew about it, and you would just guess which road should I take. I had 3 or 4% of mobile charge, and I planned this percentage is for me to check the location for the last time. This percentage for me to say where am I at this moment, just to give an update to everyone. And the last percentage is for me to call that person who got there and tell her just talk. What does the place look like exactly? Just say as fast as you can. In the middle of the conversation, my phone died. I mean, I just looked back and just saw the exhausted and the drained faces in my family. And I said, okay, let's just go home. So at that point, I'm kind of outside watching everything happening. And I think of my home. The building and the backyard where I used to play football. And I feel sort of peace.
Officials have announced the last US military plane has left Afghanistan, but desperate Afghans hoping to be evacuated, time has unfortunately run out.
Everything that happened, the group chat was still there. The teammates, the friends, they were still there.
چون تنها من نبودم که در خطر بودیم، یعنی دخترای خیلی زیاد بود که ما در یکدیگه ما حمایت میکردیم و به یکدیگه ما میگفتیم بخیر همه چیز شروع میشه.
فکر میکنم همه چیزی کل دخترها ولموش شده. گروپ چت مثل یک شمع بود، تمام وجودشون، تمام امیدشون، تمام چیز داراییشون، تمام چیزی که دارن با خود همون هست.
اونجا شما را از میدان انتقال بدیم. مثل که شما میفهمین تا مزار
8 ساعت است ولی فعلا برای کل مشکلات شاید 10 ساعت بگیرد.
I personally knew that if we don't get them out now, the situation will not allow us to get them out months from now either. In the heat of the moment, people cared, but afterwards they could care less, and we just see them as a group of people. We see them as Afghans, but each Afghan has their own story. When we got to Mazar Sharif, they were supposed to go to the airport, but unfortunately, the situation was just as chaotic as Kabul. We just didn't anticipate it. So instead, we had to quickly shift, and we decided to keep them in a safe house. The safe house was similar to a banquet hall. Now they're finally not chasing around on the roads, and they have time to rest and recover.
So we thought it's gonna be for just a couple of hours.
و بجای شما 21 روز تقریبا اونجا ماندیم.
It was really important for me for the girls to be granted asylum in a country and not end up in a refugee camp. A lot of migrants leave Afghanistan, they're displaced. People don't want them in their countries, and they have that sense. And so it was really important for me for them to find a place to call home.
سلام همگی، از حوصله‌مندی و از قدرتمندی شما تشکر میکنم.
باز فعلا از دل جان بر شما کار میکنیم.
لطفاً یکی دیگر را حمایت کنیم. مثل که تا فعلا قهرمان بودین، انشاءالله با خیر پیشرفت میکنیم.
خیلی دخترها همگی ما در هم دیگه نزدیک شده بودیم به خاطری که همگی ما یک مشکل داشتیم و همگی ما یک آرزو را داشتیم، یعنی در یک گروهی بودیم که میخواستیم از افغانستان برایم.
همین موقع هم هستیم، تنها نیستیم، اگر پشت هم دیگه باشیم میتونیم این کار انجام بدیم.
سلام همگی، طیاره ما آماده است، بیرون هتل باز منتظر شما است. لطفاً به زودی خود برسانید که باید برایم.
And we checked our WhatsApp and we saw the Farkhunda told us that the bus is there and you need to get your stuff. And we screamed and everybody was so happy. And I'm so scared because the security is checking my bag and I have my national team jersey. And he takes that out and he looks at me and says, "Are you a football player?" And I'm like, "Me? No, I'm not. Well, what made you think that?" And he just laughs and says, "Don't worry, like, this is over." So we got on the plane, and even at that point, I'm like expecting something to happen because this is unreal. And I'm expecting the Taliban would be like, stop the airplane. We didn't even know where we were going. We were just happy that the plane took off.
من خیلی ناراحت بودم، گریان کردم به خاطر از اینکه وطن خودم اعلام میکنم، ترک میکنم و میرم. چیزی را که ساخته بودم و آرزوهایی که داشتم به خاک یکسان شد و خیلی سخت بود. وقتی مسابقه میریم و چقدر زود تیر شد همه چیز.
We all are players from the Afghanistan national team, but after the Taliban came and took power of Afghanistan, they no longer want female athletes participating in sport, and for that reason we're currently under a ban and can't. And so we decided to play under the banner of Team Ayinda, and Ayinda means future in Farsi. They might be facing difficulties now, but we know that there will be the change for future generations.
اوکی دخترها، همین تمرین آخرین ما هستک. قبل از سفر کردن به سویدن صدها تیم‌ها اونجا می باشند. شاید از شما کده یعنی تیزتر باشند و یا کلانتر باشند، ولی از ما کده قوی‌تر نیستند. بسیار مشکلات یک جای دیدیم، منعکس خواهد و شما تانستیم که پیشرفت کنیم و کامیاب باشیم. امروز ما به مردم افغانستان بازی میکنیم و امروز نشان میدیم که ما کی هستیم. آماده هستین دخترها؟ اوکی. 1 2 3 آیدا! Okay, amazing. Well, I'm not Okay, well, we'll try this again. It's such a pleasure to be here. I've grown up in the Ontario soccer system, had a very pleasant upbringing through playing for Wexford Soccer Club and Vaughan Missouri in League One, Ontario. And also, I'm very happy to return to my alma mater, York University, so it's the best of both today. I hope you felt moved after watching that documentary. And I hope that you understand the transformational impact of sport. And that's what I really want to speak about today, because sport does have the power to change society as a whole and has so much potential to offer solutions to global issues. And so I'm just going to tap into my own personal experience and talk a little bit about my purpose of global active citizenship, how I've come to continue the work that I do today, and why it has a substantial impact on not only myself, but the communities that I'm involved in. So, originally from Afghanistan, my parents fled war the first time the Taliban came around. They became refugees and later resettled to Canada when I was 2 years old. And so I grew up extremely blessed for the resources and supports that I had, because I knew that many people around the world, not only in Afghanistan, did not have access to the same supports that I did. And I wanted to maximize that and become the best version of myself, so ultimately I can give back in a substantial way. And so growing up, I was exposed to many social injustices, and that was particularly through the news, being able to see humanitarian issues, wars, so many social injustices that actually provided more questions than answers for myself. And it was devastating to watch, I'll be honest. I used to watch it since I was 5 years old, and most of it was around my country, Afghanistan. And I couldn't really understand why politics seemed to work that way. But instead of dreading the situation and seeing injustices as something that was disheartening, I saw it through a lens of optimism. So everyone digests reality in a different way, and for me, that was an opportunity to look at it optimistically and recognize how I can be able to foster change. And the way I was able to foster change meant that I had to fully understand my intersecting identities so that I can actually understand how I can support. And so as an African Canadian, I made sure that I was extremely busy from a young age, understanding who I was and investing time in my academics and athletics, because my goal was global active citizenship. For those of you who don't know, global active citizenship is understanding that global issues require global solutions beyond geographical boundaries. So regardless where you are in the world, you understand that we all have a commitment toward humanity, and we all can be a part of that change, and we all have a responsibility, quite frankly, regardless of where we are, because we know that if one injustice affects our community today, who's to say that it won't affect another community another day? And so, as I was going along on my purpose of global active citizenship, I knew that athletics was going to be a conduit to social justice. And so I was involved, going to public school 8:30 to 3:30 every single day, was involved in every single extracurricular activity possible, you name it. And then I also attended mosque classes Monday to Friday as well to learn more about my faith, because as you can imagine, there is a lot of stigma associated and stereotypes associated to my faith, and I wanted to be able to fully understand it so that I could not only defend it, but also share the positive image that it really was. And then also I was involved in Ontario soccer since I was young. Again, Marksford Soccer Club originally when I was in Scarborough, and then afterwards with the great Carmen Isacco at Wanazuri, playing Legal in Ontario, which I had a very pleasant time with. And so as I was doing that, I was also going to Persian school. So you noticed I was speaking Persian there, know how to read and write it. And when you're a kid, you kind of tell your parents, like, what use is this? I'm in Canada. Well, guess what? Full swing. It was very useful. And the English, we didn't type in English at all. It was mostly in Persian, but for your sake, it was up in English. But as I was doing that, and also supporting in soup kitchens, welfare centers, and giving back to the community as well, I then embarked my post-secondary education at York University. So I got recruited to play for Carmen Isacco again. And I was studying kinesiology and health sciences at the time. And I also started representing the Afghanistan women's national team in 2016. So that was a huge honor for me to be able to represent my nation. And as I was doing that, growing up, sport was more than just recreation. But now, as I was studying kin and involved in these high-level, high-performance sport, I saw that, beyond the biological and physiological aspect of sport, the geopolitical and socioeconomic impact of sport was just as important. And I wanted to shift my focus also on that as well. And so as I was doing this, I thought, sport can be an opportunity for me to help change gender norms in Afghanistan and around, the Middle East, and even in Canada today. I think a lot of times we look at the Middle East or other disadvantaged nations and assume that we are far ahead of the game, which in some instances we might be, but that's not to say that we don't have our own social issues and that we can't be better as a nation as well. And so as I was doing that, we were actually hit by the COVID-19 pandemic during my time at York University. And at this time, I was studying Teachers College at York, and I was still a varsity student athlete, but I was also coaching OPDL soccer and playing, at Wanazuri and York University. And despite the pandemic, there was restrictions, and you could still compete. So you could still train, you could still have soccer operations and activities, but one group that was heavily, disproportionately affected was the newcomer community, the underserved communities, and they didn't have these outlets, and their mental health was deteriorating just as much as any of us were, but they didn't have somewhere to go to where they can let that steam off. And that's when I realized that, there has to be opportunities for them, and it should be non-negotiable. I think a lot of us are privileged because we're here, but not everyone is, and understanding that. So that's when I co-founded Scarborough Simbas, and that's, I don't live in Scarborough anymore, but of course has a significant impact in my life because I grew up there. And so I created Scarborough Simbas, where we help ease, it's a nonprofit organization, where we help ease the settlement journey of refugees and newcomers to Canada. So it's completely free programming. We offer recreational support. Again, it's structured by top athletes in the OUA, in League One Ontario, in the CPL. So it's not like we treat them as second-class citizens, give them just as much opportunity, offer free programming when it comes to gear, meals, tutoring support, educational support. So it's a very holistic program. And so I was doing that as well, and then in 2021, I graduated from York University's Teachers College program, and I took on a role of assistant coach with, again, Carmen Isacco, for York University's women's soccer team. I was directing my nonprofit organization, and I was also heading into my first teaching contract in 2021, when unfortunately things took a very interesting turn, which is what you saw up on the screen. So I was the captain of the Afghanistan women's national team up until the Taliban took over, so currently there is none, as you are aware. And during the summer of 2021, there was a lot of turmoil in Afghanistan. The U.S. was chaotically withdrawing from Afghanistan, the Taliban was taking over the nation, and our own president at the time fled. So you can imagine how miserable the situation would have been in Afghanistan. And at the same time, we were preparing for the Asian Cup qualifiers. So this was August that you just saw. In September, we were supposed to compete in that for the first time ever. And as we're doing that, the conversations went from preparing to, can you help evacuate the Afghan youth national team? And I had no clue what to do, I'll be honest. I mean, I support refugees and newcomers, but I'm not a diplomat. I don't work for the Canadian government, and I am just a 23-year-old at this time. I graduated from university. And teachers always say, educators or coaches, like, when you graduate from university, you are going to be welcome to the real world. Well, I didn't think that the real world would hit you so hard like that. But anyways, I vowed that regardless of what would have happened, I was going to take a step and figure out a solution. if there's anything about Afghans, you know that we are very determined individuals, and I think newcomers in general, they always want to find a solution because they've been denied so many times, or their, you know, parents have been denied. They want to make sure that the future of others is vibrant. And so as I was doing that, let's just say it wasn't easy. And I finally was able to get connected to intelligence officers in the White House. And I explained to them, I sat on a Zoom meeting with them, explained to them the sensitivity, as if they weren't aware already, but they were willing to support me. But they made it clear that this is your mission, and you have to evacuate them. We are here to support you. And so we tried dozens of times and failed dozens of times every day. That was a very simplistic form of it. And just to give you some context, there was no flights coming in and out of Afghanistan. So there's the U.S. charter flights up until August 31st. And then afterwards, there's no way out of the nation. Even during that time, the borders around Afghanistan were all shut. So your only way out was really no way out, sadly. And there's so much potential that all of these young girls had, but specifically with them, because they represented Afghanistan and they were just playing sport is defying gender norms and societal norms in Afghanistan, their lives would heavily be at risk. And so after trying dozens of times and well over a month, we were finally able to evacuate them to Portugal. And so I was 3 weeks into my teaching contract at this time. I kid you not, I was the worst teacher in my opinion, because I went in and I would be on my phone 24/7, and then I would get a call from the White House and have to step out and answer that, of course. But the funny thing is, when I left my teaching contract 3 weeks after, my students cried, and they were in grade 12, so it made me feel a little nice. But I gave them life lessons rather than like science lessons because I didn't have time for that. So and it became useful, so I'm glad. But 3 weeks into my teaching contract, I was invited to Portugal by the donors and government officials. And I was supposed to surprise the girls, and I don't know why I keep looking up there. I don't even have a PowerPoint. So I was supposed to surprise the girls and the family members and run a couple training sessions. And as I was there with my little suitcase, because I was there for 3 days, supposed to be, I was asked to keep extending my stay to help support the families and stabilize the situation. Portugal is a beautiful nation, but it's not a heavily diverse nation, doesn't have an Afghan diaspora, isn't very familiar with newcomers and refugees in general. And so I kept extending my stay, and I was teaching virtually at the time in Portugal. And then it came to the point where they were like, we need you to stay and help build a resettlement plan, and can you live in Portugal? So that's when I said goodbye to permanent settle. And all the other commitments that I had, I took a temporary pause and decided to live in Portugal, help build a resettlement plan with global organizations, government officials, and support them from housing, education, athletics, coaching them as well, and offering that cultural support. Because as we know, refugees and newcomers, the way we want to treat them is the way they want to be treated, right? Not the way we think they should be treated. So everyone has, you have to be aware of cultural norms and understanding of the situation that they're coming from and the trauma that they went through and the mental health support that they require. And if someone is not relatable, then unfortunately that support isn't really going to resonate. And so I ended up living there. It wasn't easy with my small suitcase, especially for a girl. But in 2022, I returned back home, early 2022, and I had left my teaching contract at the time. Obviously, I was still heavily involved in sport in Canada. But that's when I understood really understood the transformational power of sport and the influence that I had on the lives of so many young girls that never had the opportunity to play, and also how inspired they felt. So there was never an Afghan national team player that played professional for the women's side. And they almost disbelieved that that was possible, and I wanted to prove to them that it was very much possible for any of us. And so I decided I would take time off of what I was doing in Canada and become a professional soccer player in Europe, because that was one of my desires when I was younger, give back through sport or education. And so I took on that opportunity. I've been living in the Netherlands ever since, playing professional soccer, so I'm just here for a couple days. And enjoying it for sure, but also the work that I do both on and off the pitch is very synonymous. So I use my platform on the pitch to help advocate for underserved communities, to draw more attention to the social justice issues that they are surrounded with, and how we all can play an active role in changing that. And then also off the pitch, not only working with global organizations in Europe, so I've been blessed. So currently I'm a UNHCR ambassador and Women for Women International, and with these global organizations where we do speak up for social causes and actually lead tangible change. But also, I don't know where I was going with that. But, sorry, this is where I was going. Also, being heavily involved in Canada, in sport in Canada, because of course I was raised here. For me, it's really important to give back to the communities that uplifted me and shaped the trajectory of my life. And I know growing up in sport in Canada, I very much enjoyed it, but there was not many people that looked like me. And you might think, oh, well, you grew up in Scarborough. Trust me, when I say I was the only Middle Eastern girl that I've ever played, well, I mean, I can't play with myself, but that was on my team that I've ever competed against. And I'm not very old, just to let you know. So that wasn't a long time ago. But that's when I had the honor and privilege of meeting Wayne McNeil, who is a co-founder of Respect Group. So I'm currently also the Director of Culture and Conscience at the Respect Group. And the Respect Group is a company that uses online educational and e-learning modules that are very interactive to really fight against bullying, abuse, harassment, and discrimination in sport. So regardless if you personally have faced this or not, to this day, we know that our communities are affected by this. And I think the most important thing that we can do is provide that education so that we can foster a culture of support, of respect and understanding, and help shift our unconscious bias, tap into those unconscious biases that we all have. And so we are actually offering, I should move on to that, yes. We are offering free access to Keeping Girls in Sport, which is very important to the Canadian landscape of sport, but to us all, to stay involved in sport, but really the method and strategy in which we can do that, and also respect and support for parents. We know that parents have a substantial influence in the lives of athlete youth, and we want to make sure that we keep our youth in sport, and the only possible way is through positive encounters with our parents that we spend so much time with. And so that is what you can take advantage of. And if there's anything that I want to leave you with today is 3 things. Never underestimate your impact. You will never understand the potential you have and the capacity that you do have to support your communities. It's just one leap of faith and taking action. The only difference between our dreams and desires and actually fulfilling them is that actionable steps that it takes to get there. And a lot of times we start mapping out things and we think of like this very difficult way of achieving that, but once you manifest that you can do something good with the skills that you have, I believe that you will be able to achieve it. The next thing I want you to recognize is global active citizenship is a responsibility of us all. So regardless of what's happening within Canada, of course we want to make sure that we are heavily supporting our own nation first and providing that support that it does desire and making the Canadian landscape one that is genuinely inclusive to everyone and so that we can all benefit from. We also need to make sure we are educated on what's happening globally, because that does in turn affect sport in our nation. And so those are a couple things that I want to leave you with. And a quote from JFK, which is my favorite quote: ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We always expect others to do for us, or our nation to do for us, or our club to do for us, but we're not willing to put in the work to make that club, that organization, that country better. So instead of trying to always hold our leaders accountable, and by leaders I mean politicians, I think we are the ones that can really bring change from the down up. So I hope you support me and join this movement of activism through sport.
Ontario Soccer, so thanks Farkhunda for giving us a lived experience. A lot of us who take and do these sort of things, it's because we're living it. The stats showed us what's happening. We're the ones who are answering those questions. The Institute report, I think I provided the feedback as part of my work. That's something that we all want to be involved in to create change. So tomorrow we have a session, Aparna, Mishra and I, and we're going to be talking about DEI and what has happened so far at Ontario Soccer. Our journey has really started since 2020, 2019 even, and we're going to highlight some of the things that we've done and how you guys can move forward to be part of the change for soccer.